This is not your ordinary cheesecake. It's a tiramisu cheesecake made with homemade ladyfingers, buttery espresso-soaked layers, and a silky, creamy filling. It looks straight out of a fancy cafe or bakery, but it's surprisingly easy to make at home. And trust me, once you try it, you'll want to make it again and again. Let's start with the homemade ladyfingers because they are the heart of this dessert. First, I separated the eggs, keeping the yolks and whites completely separate. To the yolks, I added 1 teaspoon of vanilla, half of the 75 grams of sugar. Then I beat them for about 5 minutes until they were pale, creamy, and ribbon-like. For the egg whites, I switched to a completely clean, dry whisk. I whipped them on high speed until they became foamy, then gradually added the remaining sugar. I kept whipping until I had a glossy, creamy meringue with medium stiff peaks. When I lifted the whisk, the peak stood up, but the key here is not to over-whip the meringue. You want it stable but still smooth and flexible. I folded the meringue into the yolk texture in 3 additions, gently folding from the bottom up, so I wouldn't knock out all that beautiful air. Once the mixture was partially combined, I stirred in 1/3 of my dry ingredients, 1/3 of 70 grams of flour, 20 grams of cornstarch, and a pinch of salt, and folding gently after each one. The goal is to keep as much air in the batter as possible. That's what gives homemade ladyfingers their light, airy texture. If you want to support my channel, just give this video a like and share it with a friend. It means a lot. I immediately transferred the batter to a piping bag. For a 9-inch pan, we need about 300 grams of ladyfingers. So after baking this batch of 24, I made another half batch using the exact same method and pipe it into my ladyfinger mold, which I placed on a baking sheet first so it would stay completely stable. This recipe makes about 24 ladyfingers. I finished them with a generous dusting of powdered sugar, then baked them in a preheated oven at 311 degrees Fahrenheit for about 15 minutes. And this is exactly what I was looking for. Lightly crisp and delicate on the outside, but soft and spongy in the center. Once they had cooled completely, I transferred the ladyfingers to a food processor with a teaspoon of vanilla and a pinch of salt and pulsed them into fine crumbs. For 300 grams of ladyfingers, I added 100 grams of melted butter and 1 shot of espresso. A few more pulses, just until everything looked like moist, sandy crumbs. Now, let's make the cheesecake filling. I added 600 grams of cream cheese or mascarpone, 120 grams of powdered sugar, 1 teaspoon of vanilla, and a pinch of salt to a bowl. I beat everything until completely smooth and creamy. Then, after adding 200 grams of heavy cream, mixed just until everything was fully combined. For the gelatin, I sprinkled 9 grams of gelatin over 40 grams of cooled water and let it bloom until it became soft and spongy. Then I gently melted it in the microwave. Before adding it to the cheesecake mixture, I mixed a spoonful of the cheesecake filling into the warm gelatin. This little step is important because it helps prevent gelatin from setting into the little lumps. I spread about 2/3 of my ladyfinger crumbs into the bottom of a spring form pan and press them down firmly with the back of a spoon or glass. Then I drizzled a few tablespoons of espresso over the crust. I pressed everything down, making sure the layer was compact and even. Next, I poured in half of the cheesecake filling and smoothed it out. Then came the second layer of those espresso-infused ladyfinger crumbs. I spread them evenly and gently pressed them into place. Gently fix it using the bottom of a glass. Another few tablespoons of espresso went over, followed by the rest of the cheesecake filling. I smoothed the top, then used the back of a spoon to create a few soft waves across the surface. Then covered and refrigerated overnight so the cheesecake could fully set and all those tiramisu flavors could come together. And of course, no tiramisu is complete without cocoa. I sifted a generous layer of unsweetened cocoa powder all over the top. Then enjoy every bite!